Given a choice, Nick Dal Santo would have been playing his 16th AFL season with North Melbourne this year. Instead, he has moved into the commentary box, and it's been a switch that's raised quite a few eyebrows. Dal Santo has been both succinct and informative and incisive in his commentary with Fox Footy and SEN. Nice start, young man. Welcome.
Thank you, Mike. Nice to be here.
Have you enjoyed it?
I've loved it.
The switch?
I have. I've actually really enjoyed it. As you just mentioned, would have loved to have played on another year, and it wasn't to be, but I put a few little things in place and have always enjoyed the media while playing and have been really fortunate to get a role at Fox Footy and SEN, and I've loved it. Still involved in the game, still get to talk about it.
How would Nick Dal Santo, the commentator, describe Nick Dal Santo, the footballer?
I think I would be frustrated as a commentator. There's certain players in the league that probably play similar to the way that I did, but there's no doubt I was a frustrating player, and one of the frustrations that I had when I was playing was when you're playing well, it looked like it was the easiest thing in the world. You could do whatever you want, time stood still, all those sort of things. But when you played poorly, it's you didn't care, you didn't try, didn't mean enough to you. But my opinion is I played roughly similar most games and I prepared similar most games. But if I was watching myself, I'd put myself in that category of very laconic, made it look a bit easier than it probably could have been, but frustrating, absolutely.
So I think you were marked hard because of that languid, or that unhurried style of play of yours.
Yeah.
You always seemed to have time, didn't you? Like Scotty Pendlebury and like your cousin Marcus Bontempelli.
Yeah, they both do it a lot better than I did. But that's just the way that I played. It wasn't on purpose. I tried every game. I mean, to say that you didn't try or it didn't mean enough, it was my life. It was everything for me for 15 years. What
gets forgotten, I think, is that you played 322 games in 15 seasons. That's an average of 21, better than 21. That's a record you're entitled to be very proud of.
Yeah, I'm happy with it. Looking back on it, it is a lot of footy. Ultimately, I didn't get what I really wanted, being a premiership. But, I mean, you look back and it's been a long time. It's a lot of football, 322 games, but, geez, it went quick.
Your mate Nick Riewoldt says you never missed training, your preparation was always spot on, and you were remarkably resilient.
Yeah, and I appreciate that from Nick because, in my opinion, he was the best at training. He was the best preparer for any footy game. But I wanted to make sure I never missed a session. I learned at an early age that if I felt like I did the whole pre-season and literally not miss a session, then I'd probably get through the footy season. And most times you do. Early
in the season, Nick, I shared the commentary box at SEN with you on breakfast one morning. And I must say I was surprised, and I complimented you on it, about how blunt you were about some players that you played with as recently as last year.
Yeah.
Andrew Swallow and Todd Goldstein in particular.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have liked what you said.
I spoke to them afterwards.
Did you?
And I had a great relationship and still do with all the players that I think I've played with. Those two in particular, it wasn't a personal attack. I was calling their games and I was noticing things within the game that in some ways was out of their control. And I just noticed that he was playing in positions that I thought weren't his best position.
Like half forward?
Like half forward and on the wing. And in my opinion, whether it was right or wrong, and it turned out to be justified in some way that he ended up getting dropped a month later, that he was getting squeezed out of the midfield. And that's all I was trying to say. It wasn't personal. Andrew's a ripping fella. And then I noticed Todd Goldstein's gone to the full forward line and he's an All-Australian ruckman. He's the best ruckman at that football club. He's one of the best in the league. I just couldn't get my head around why he wasn't playing in his best position.
But the author, says it's not personal. The bloke on the other end of it always thinks it's personal.
Yeah, I spoke to them both. And
did you ring them or did they ring you?
I called them. And that's sort of out of courtesy, but also, in some ways as a mate, just saying, how are you travelling? How are you feeling? Are you happy? All those sort of things. So it sort of worked both ways. But in no way was I trying to soften the blow because, as I said, you call what you see. And I did see things within the game that didn't make sense to me and just trying to clarify it.
What did you say when you rang them?
I called them and said, how are you going? And how's footy and all that? And then I said, just to clarify, this isn't about me rating you as a player or not. This is what I'm seeing. And for Andrew Swallow's example, why are you playing on the wing? Why are you playing half forward? Where's the structure at? And that's more of as a supporter and enjoying the way that they play their footy.
The club made, I think it's fair to say that it was a clumsy decision on the futures of Brent Harvey, Michael Frito, yourself. Was there a fourth one?
Drew Petrie.
Drew Petrie.
Yep.
Yeah. You were embroiled in that. And were you angry or disappointed?
I was initially probably disappointed, as in I felt physically and mentally like I could still contribute. I felt like I'd played okay football last year, enough to probably warrant another year of footy. But at the time, I sort of accepted it. I didn't turn my toes up. We still had another game to play, or 2 games to play. We ended up losing the first final at Adelaide. But I quickly accepted that this is football. I've seen so many players come and go. I was fortunate enough to play 15 odd years. It has to end at some stage. And if it wasn't last year. It might have been the end of this year. So it is what it is. And I never wanted to walk away from St Kilda or North Melbourne feeling angry at the football club, or I never wanted to go back there. And in some ways, when I sat down with Brad Scott, and I respected him coming over to my house on a Tuesday afternoon and telling me the news, even though I didn't want him to come over because I knew what he was about to do.
Yeah.
But I did understand where they were heading as a footy club, and I do accept that you can't play forever. And Brent Harvey's an exception to the rule that he's played for 20-odd seasons. He's 37. But for me and the average player, 32, 33 years of age is a good career, and I'm happy with that.
In retrospect, did the club make the right decision?
In regards to us,
the
timing?
As a group? I think the timing will always be an issue. But
yeah. Well, first of all, on the timing, I didn't have an issue with it. And I can understand externally. As a player, all I ever wanted was honesty. Tell me if I'm playing poor footy, if I'm playing really good football, whether you want me, whether you don't want me. I was happy to find out. And I knew something was bubbling away. When I felt like I was playing okay football and there was no contractual talk and you're hearing whispers, and the clubs, we weren't playing great footy. We won the first 10 in a row, whatever it was, and then we started playing really poor footy. Something has to change. And it often starts from the older guys, and that's just footy. And I'd seen enough experiences in my life to say it's probably me. So I didn't agree with it at the time, and even still sitting here, I feel like I could be playing, but on the other hand, they're playing good footy as well. They're going in a different direction. They need a rebuild. They need young kids to get an opportunity to play. So I'm all for that. I sit here comfortably 8-9 months later going, good call.
You finished 7th in the best and fairest.
Yep.
And had 29 in that final against Adelaide. So the form line was okay, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, the interesting bit and the funny bit when Brad came to my house on that Tuesday is his first question was, how do you feel? And I said, I feel really good. Mentally feel good. Physically, I'd come off a decent game against Sydney 3 or 4 days earlier. And I had that split second. I thought, geez, he's come all the way to my house to say, Dal, we've got your contract for next year. That's really nice of him. Then he basically complimented me. And I've had a great relationship with Brad, so it was perfectly civil and respectful. And he said, you're playing great footy, you just can't do it here next year. We need to have some young kids coming through. And I choked up a little bit, and I didn't cry or anything like that, but we had a chat for about an hour. He sat on the couch at our house and we went through it, where the club's heading, what's needed, these young kids need to come through. And I sort of, when I shut the door, I didn't cry or anything like that, but I was like, it sort of makes sense to me as well. And unfortunately, it's my turn to step aside, because when I was 17 and got to St Kilda, there was other guys that had to step aside for me. And it's just the cycle of footy.
But tell us about the wrench. You started as an AFL footballer at 18 years of age.
Yeah.
You just turned 18.
Yeah.
You're in your early 30s and it's all over suddenly.
Yeah, it does feel sudden, and geez, it goes quick. I can still remember Stewie Lowe saying to me in my first pre-season, enjoy it, boys, it goes quick.
Yeah.
I was like, whatever, old man. I said, you're 33, you've got
cut
kids.
that out.
Well, you're 33, you've got kids. I said, we're going to play forever. And then 15 years on, that's me, 2 kids, 33, and it's all over.
Were you pushed away by St Kilda?
I wasn't pushed, but I felt at that time I was in a situation where I didn't have many other options. I was 29, been there since I was 17. I finished Year 12 in Bendigo as a 17-year-old. A week later, I was training in Melbourne with Nathan Burke, Robert Harvey, Stewie Lowe, like some of the biggest names of the club's history. Been there for 12 years, and then at that stage, I had a year left on a contract, and then felt like things were happening behind the scenes that I was well aware of. And I wasn't smarter than other players, but I sort of saw it coming, and I was open with the older guys at St Kilda. Spoke to Rewalt, Montagna, Hayes, and I said to them during the year, Adam Schneider, I said, I don't think I'm going to be here next year. I said, they're trying to move me on, if not more. So
you say they. Are we referring specifically to Scott Watters, the coach, or was it a broader push than that?
To name 2 names, Scott Watters was the senior coach, so he's obviously a big part of it, and Chris Pelkin had come in as the list manager. And I was open about it. I remember we had leadership meetings and we spoke to both of them. We said, we feel like we're walking around on eggshells at times here, that the club, we weren't playing good footy again. We're going through a down cycle after having some really successful years of winning games. We lost 2 premierships in that period under Ross Lyon, and then Scotty comes in, which was a tough gig in itself, trying to replace someone that, we'd had some semi-success with. And I just felt like they were trying to find a way to rejuvenate this list, and that meant bring young kids in. So I was really honest with the players that I was really close with, saying, I don't reckon I'm going to be here. And it wasn't initially by choice, but then ultimately I had to agree to it as well at the end of the year.
So Goddard, McAvoy, Dal Santo, all very, very highly talented players and contributors, all went in the space of 2 years?
Yeah, BJ first, and then Benny and myself.
So that was a bit like what North ultimately did, wasn't it? I mean, it was just, there was a clear change of direction at St Kilda.
Yeah, which is probably needed as well. And I was probably a bit more disappointed with the St Kilda one because I'd been there for so long. My best mates are there, and I'm still best mates to this day with that particular playing group. And I've seen Nick Riewoldt and Joey Montagna still playing, and I think that's fantastic. But I felt at that time, if it wasn't me that left, it was going to be one of us anyway, if not more of us.
How would you be if you crossed paths with Scotty Waters?
You know what? I've never bumped into him. Since, 4 or 5 years now, I've never bumped into him. I'd say g'day. I mean, I was polite. He wasn't my favourite coach, but I had 4 senior coaches in my AFL career. Scotty wasn't my favourite. He was in a tough situation to come in after Rossi because I'm a
Scotty
massive...
as in Scotty Waters.
Sorry, Scotty Waters.
Not Brad Scott.
Sorry, Scott Waters. Yeah. I'm a massive Ross Lyon fan and will be till the day I die. I just believed in everything that he said and bought into what he was as a coach. So Scott was in a tough position anyway to come in and try and replace what we'd had in that success. But there was sort of tactically some stuff that happened internally, some stuff that I didn't always agree with as a senior player. But I'd be polite enough to go and say g'day. I'd never snub him or, ignore him.
You played finals in 7 of 8 years under Grant Thomas and Ross Lyon.
Yep.
And in all 3 years under Brad Scott at North Melbourne.
Yeah.
10 years as a finals player.
Yeah, with no granny, with no premiership.
Well, 3 grannies.
Yeah. It's the one thing that, obviously, that sits with me about not winning a premiership, which is the hardest part. And the playing group that we had at the Saints for that particular of 9, 10, 11, it feels like we have won a premiership in the way that we treat each other and we catch up. We have 20 of us catch up for dinner, regularly. So we still have that feeling of something, but ultimately not what we're meaning to be catching up for. So it is tough. But, it's nice to play finals. That's what we play for. But I sit here with my career over not having what I really want.
Your 3 grand finals, how did you appraise them? Statistically, they weren't up to your normal standard?
Yeah, I didn't play great. I started off okay in the 09 granny just to try and dissect it. Never watched them. Never watched any of the grannies. I've only seen the highlights of the Chapman goal in 2009 and the Milne bounce in 2010, but I've never watched any of it in its entirety or even quarters. I had a small injury in 2009, I ended the first quarter, which didn't help. Went into 2010 with a sore hamstring, and then I reckon I was about the only person on the field that was sort of semi-happy that there was a draw, that we could come back the next week and perform better.
And you played well in the replay, didn't you?
I was better in the replay, yeah. And it's funny, going into that replay and get asked so many times, how did you feel about the draw? It was confusion about, first of all, what do we do? Do we play extra time? You never try and plan for this sort of scenario. But I actually went into the replay thinking we're more of a chance to beat Collingwood the second time around. We've got a more mature group. We're probably more seasoned to be able to bounce back and do this all again. Just turns out that I was really, really wrong. They, I think what they did to us the second time in the replay, they probably should have done to us in the first. I think that's how much better Collingwood were than us that year. And we had our chance in the first game against Collingwood and just didn't get it done. So
many St Kilda supporters feel like the gods are against them.
Yeah.
Did the playing group have that view? I mean, the Milne bounce.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, it might have fallen into his arms, might that?
Yeah, we never spoke about a curse or anything like that. We actually thought, if anything, was going to be this fairy tale that we were going to play our whole careers, a little bit like the Shane Crawford scenario.
Yep.
That, we're going to not necessarily finish our career, but we're going to be one that, you look at the Western Bulldogs from last year, some of their senior players, we've finally ticked off what we wanted to do because we lost a prelim 04, 05, 08, lost the granny 9, thought, OK, maybe 10, we're just going to sneak one out.
2008, Nick, do you remember mid-season? I think 12 rounds are done.
Yes, I do.
Your favourite coach, Ross Lyon, decides you can have a spell in the seconds.
The only mistake Ross has ever made.
Well, in fact, Ross is going to trump you with that.
Yeah.
The figures about the wins and losses after that.
Yeah, he's good with his stats, Ross.
Yeah, he is. I think at that stage you were 5-7 after 12 rounds.
Yep.
You and Milne both get dumped.
Yep.
Come back a week later. But the run from there for the next 2.5 years was extraordinary, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And once again...
Well, 4th that year in 08.
Yeah.
And then 2 grand finals.
Yeah. Well, once again, being honest, I was playing crappy footy in 08, and it wasn't on purpose. I just was playing poor footy, and we were 5-7 after 12 rounds, and something had to change again. And I'd been a steady player in the team for a period of time and didn't deserve a spot, and got dropped. Wasn't happy with it at the time, as I think was early 20s, mid-20s, and felt that there was other players that were in a similar boat, but copped my right whack. And if there's one thing that I can sort of be proud of is I know where I was at as a player. I claim to be certain things, and I've said I'm definitely not these other things. And I was playing poor footy. There's talk that it's the turning point, and I think that's what you're trying to refer to. And I think, well, not really. I mean, I don't...
Some of your teammates think that.
Well, it would have been nice if they were the ones that got dropped, and then I could turn around and say it was the turning point. I think it just put us on notice that there were certain things that were tolerated and certain things that weren't, and it didn't matter who you were, what you'd done in the past. If you weren't performing at that stage, that Rossi and the team didn't support it and didn't support you, and it was integrity of selection. And if anything, at least I was resilient enough. I took my right whack, went back and played okay in the seconds. Wasn't fantastic. Milne was brilliant. Then that week he went back and we came back in and played better footy. And if I was honest, I'd say it gave me a little clip to say the coaching staff didn't rate me, my peers didn't rate me, and to have blokes like Nick Riewoldt, who I respected, Lenny Hayes, to say, mate, you need to pull your head in here and work a bit harder.
Did they say that at that time?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, and then a lot firmer at the end of that football season, leading into 2009. About consistency of training standards, all these sort of things that make you a better player. Then I said, okay, if they're prepared to say that to me and put me on the spot and they mean it and they care, then maybe I'm the one that isn't pulling their weight. And
so how do you react when mates and people you respect like Riewoldt and Hayes say to you that you need to pull your head in?
Well, I took it on board. I had to, Mike. I think if I was ignorant enough or naive enough to say, you know what would Nick Riewoldt know about me and the way I'm training?
Yeah.
So I said, okay, if he's prepared to look me in the eye and had a crack at me, I remember standing up in front of the group as the old 360-degree sort of feedback, and they had a crack at me. It was a good crack. They went everything through training standards, performance, contributing, consistency. A couple of coaches jumped in about off-field education and making sure I had a balanced life. Yeah, I was at the front. Yeah. I still remember it. I remember walking away thinking, wow, that was pretty full on.
Yeah.
But once again, saying if they care that much, and it was about caring, it was about improving. We thought we had a decent team, and turns out in 09 and 10 we were
You
decent.
responded well.
Yeah. That if they cared enough to tell me that, then I have to take it on board, and I think I did.
You openly declare your love in a platonic sense for Ross Lyon.
Yeah.
He polarises people. There are a lot of people in your corner. I think this is how I view him from the outside, that if he's got people who he believes are delivering for him, he embraces them, cuddles them, but if he doesn't, he's prepared to burn them.
That's probably a good summary. And I was fortunate, and if you ask maybe some of the younger players at St Kilda in that period of time when we were going well, they probably aren't a Ross Lyon fan, that they were pushed to the side, that they were used in training sessions as just witches' hats, as they had to wear the bibs all the time so the senior group could hone their craft. But fortunately for me, that I was on that other side, that I was part of the playing group that were digging in every week. And it used to feel like he'd wind us up, he'd give us the message and we'd go out and be able to execute. So I'm a massive fan. I can understand in some ways why other people don't like Rossi, but for me, all I could say is what I saw. And I don't know about the administration, I don't know about the coaching staff, but all I know is the way that he treated me and the playing group that I was probably dealing with at that stage, that we bought in. He was part of the playing group. He'd have beers with us at the right time after a game. He'd nail us in meetings at the right time. He'd have a crack at us in games. But as I said earlier, all you want is honesty. And I felt like I always got that from Ross.
I read a story recently about Nick Riewoldt being in hospital when Ross decided to to leave St Kilda and go to Freo. And you could tell that Nick was really A, shocked, and B, disappointed. How were you when Ross walked away from St Kilda?
Both of those. Shocked and disappointed. And in hindsight, we've found out there's more to the story that's between Ross and St Kilda Footy Club. I didn't see it coming, and our footy season ended. We lost to Sydney in the first final in 2011. A few guys were told that their services weren't required straight after that game, which was a little bit awkward at the time. We had beers and a bit of a catch-up, went out for a feed with Rossi a few days later, and it wasn't on the table at all. It wasn't mentioned. There was whispers that he was going to go to Melbourne, and then that was sort of put to the side, that wasn't happening, and then all of a sudden Freo's been brought up. So I did not see that coming. I think it happened on a Thursday. I was at Jason Blake's house having some dinner, and the word came through, and we were shocked, had no idea. And as I said, I loved him as a coach, thought we were going to have to dig in as a footy team to rebuild from where we'd come from, but I thought, he was a part of that at that stage.
Did you lose any respect for him because that he walked out on the contract?
No, I didn't. That wasn't my business. And when players come and go from footy clubs, I just treat people as a friend. And I still message Rossi. I speak to him, semi-regularly. But it's more as a friend. It's not about betrayal. Because people could probably say that I betrayed the Saints. And there's more to the story than walking out. But I treat people with respect and as a friend rather than, leaving.
You mentioned that there was another side to the story about Ross's departure from St Kilda.
Yeah.
What was that?
Well, we went out for a feed with Rossi. He took basically the leadership out for a steak one night, and he sort of just gave us his side of the story, because what we were hearing a lot was that he'd walked out. And as a friend of Ross's, as someone that we respected and loved, that there was stuff going on behind the scenes about opportunity to coach for a period of time, contractual stuff. which was none of our business. But you sort of get a bit of an insight that there's other stuff going on within footy clubs that, as a player, that you just don't know anything about. And I've got no angst between St Kilda at all, Saints or Rossi. It's business, and it's just the way that it goes. And Rossi's in another situation at Freo, and he's doing a good job at the moment. So we'll leave it at that.
Adam Schneider had a nickname for you. Do you know what it was?
Yeah, he's got a few. Adam Schneider.
What was his favourite for you?
He called me Squeak.
That's right, as in squeaky clean.
Yeah.
That is your image, isn't it? You seem to be a Peter Perfect. Is that true? Is it justified?
Well, I've had some moments that have gone public over my footy career, but I'm pretty clean cut. I don't do anything too outrageous.
What are the moments? What about if I asked you about social media? What would you say?
Well, I pretty much started sexting in 2010 when a photo got stolen.
A photo of you in your undies, right?
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it, Mike. I appreciate that. Yeah, we're in...
Two photos, you and your mate Nick Revolt.
Yeah. Nick's came out first. It was a couple of days before Christmas. It was our last day of pre-season 2010. And a photo of Nick came out in the morning. And then...
Naked or in his undies?
I think he's naked. Haven't looked at it that closely more.
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and check the footage. So Nick's came out first. Then I heard whispers an hour or so later that they had one of me as well. And I was like, don't believe it. Don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, later that day it came out, which was really disappointing. And it was done to death at the time, handled in certain ways that if we had our time again, we would have done differently. But my take on it was, if that's as bad as it gets, like, what more can I do? Like,
you're on an end-of-season trip, were you not?
Yeah, from a year before.
Yeah.
It was 15 months earlier. We're in Vegas.
Any
my
alcohol?
photo.
Any drink involved?
We were about 4 days in to a footy trip. After the 2009 grand final, we went to America, and we were about 4 days in, and we were just back in our hotel room. There was 10 of us mucking around and whatever. So say of that what you will. Not the end of the world. Not the end of the world.
Yeah.
It was in a private environment, whatever. But then the photos were pretty much stolen and then released to the public.
Stolen via Sam Gilbert's computer?
Yeah. Which is a story within itself, and I don't know if that's legal or not, but that never really got clarified. But I've got nothing against Sam Gilbert. That's bad luck, and he's still a really close mate. But in regards to myself and what happened, it was like, I can't do anything about it. So you've seen me semi-naked.
I mean, I must say, I thought that the undies may have been around your feet rather than on.
Yeah, not my best photo, Mike. Let's be
but
honest.
I mean, you could be in your Speedos at the beach. What's the difference?
I was in a hotel room.
Yeah, I
in
understand.
Vegas with my jocks half down. So,
half down?
I can't, anyway.
Not on, half down?
Half down.
Okay.
Half down. But...
So tell me how...
Why are you getting so detailed on this part?
Well, I'm intrigued by it. I mean, how did the photos end up on Sam Gilbert's computer?
Honestly, couldn't tell you that part.
And who took them off Sam Gilbert's computer?
Couldn't tell you who took the photos that night, and that's the honest answer. And when, as I said, when I got told that they had photos, I didn't know which ones they were referring to. And then a girl stole them off Sam Gilbert's...
Is that the St Kilda schoolgirl?
Yeah.
Do you know her? Do you know her personally?
Never met her. And I mean that honestly, never met her in my life. Didn't know who she was. I saw her in passing one day. We were training our first day at Seaford when we went down to Seaford. Our first open training session, there was media everywhere for the launch of the new facility, and she was out the front handing pamphlets. And it's the only time I ever saw her, and we were jogging past doing a warm-up lap. Never met her. Couldn't tell you what she's doing right now. So that was an interesting time. Your
mate, our friend of everyone, Nick Revolt, that seemed to knock him around more than you.
Yeah.
Seemed to affect him quite significantly.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't great. And just to give you a bit of insight, like, it got a bit serious at times. We had death threats sent to our house.
Really?
Yeah.
On the basis of what?
Exactly. On the basis of what? But when you get your face on a typed up letter sent to your home address with your face in the crosshairs of a rifle, and then the details of what a rifle can do to you and pick you off from a certain distance, you won't even know about it. You go, OK, this is getting a little bit serious.
Talking about crosshairs, were you genitalia exposed or not?
Yeah.
They were, OK.
Yeah,
so the undies weren't quite on.
I've looked better, Mike, let's put it that way. It wasn't my best angle. 4 days into a footy trip. But anyway, as my approach was, what can I do about it? I mean, you've seen me semi-naked. Who really cares? You can say what you want. All I can do, and as a player, you just dealt with what you had to.
Nick, a young bloke called Marcus Bontempelli had you as his hero when he was a kid. I mean, A, you were a very good footballer, but B, you were his first cousin.
Yeah, poor choice by him, wasn't it? Could have had better role models.
Well, did you look after him? Did you encourage him?
Oh, Mike, I've often joked, if I knew he was going to be this good, I would have given him a lot more time. The true story is I grew up in Bendigo. He's based in Eltham, or was when he was younger, and he's about 12 years younger than I am. So it was really difficult. I don't only ever really see him at Christmas functions or, family get-togethers, but because he was so much younger, I almost didn't hang out with him a lot. And
Did you see anything in him?
I knew he was good at sport. He was heavily involved in basketball as well as a kid, as a lot of those sort of cousins on that side of the family are. And I knew he was semi-talented, but even in his draft year, I'd often speak to people at St Kilda in the recruiting area and they'd say, your cousin might get drafted, he's okay. And then each week it just felt like they'd come up and say, second round, he's definitely going to get picked up, maybe first, and then he's going top 5. So, his improvement, and then now what he's doing at AFL level, to say that he was picked up at, I think, pick 4 to the Bulldogs, that was sort of questionable at the time, really, Marcus Bontempelli. But now he's just ticking boxes and it's like, how did he not go number 1?
Who's a better player out of Bontempelli and Dal Santo?
Right now, Marcus.
Right now?
You'd have to say Marcus. I mean, the way he's only played, was he 3rd or 4th year? I mean, I played for 15, so it's...
He's 21.
Yeah. You swear he's a lot older by the way he plays and his maturity and his understanding of the game, his ability to, take this, seize the moment, the big moment, kick goals. He's won a premiership. He's won a best and fairest, 2 things that I never did.
Yeah.
If he continues like this, he could be one of the best ever. Sort of
I
thing.
agree.
So
I agree.
That's how good he is.
I'm a massive fan of his.
Yeah, so you should be.
You might have won 2 Brownlows, actually, mightn't you? I mean, you were 3rd in the year that Ben Cousins beat Daniel Kerr.
Yeah.
And there are queries about the West Coast at that time.
Yeah.
Do you feel hard done by that those 2 beat you?
Not one bit. No. That's one thing that doesn't faze me at all. At all. And obviously in recent years we've seen guys get it retrospectively. And I don't know if I'd be comfortable with that. And that's not about those guys. It's probably more recent, but 2005 is a long time ago. And if you're going to take a Brownlow off Ben Cousins, then it goes to Daniel Kerr, and then take it off Daniel Kerr, you're a long way down the list to receive a Brownlow. So I've got no hard feelings about that at all. If I deserved it, I should have won it that year.
What about the year you polled 28 votes and it still wasn't enough?
That was a stitch-up that year, Mike. Couldn't do much more.
No. Swanee beat you by, what, 2?
2 or 3,
yeah.
He deserved it. Absolutely. I've got, once again, no issue with that at all. I remember I got interviewed that night at my table from Bruce McAvaney saying, how do you feel like you're going to come home? Might have been about the halfway mark. And I was tracking okay. And I said, no one's going to beat Dane Swan. I said he was averaging 36 odd possessions for the last 12 weeks of the year. And he deserved it. He was the best player by far that year. So I've got no issue. The funny bit was when Adam Goods walks past at the end of the night and shakes your hand and actually has a chuckle saying, I won 2 Brownlows with low 20s. You were stiff, but it is what it is. The Brownlows don't really bother me.
Superb career, Nick. You've done almost everything you wanted to achieve, and I'm really confident you're going to match that in the commentary box. Fox Footy and SEN. Well done.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
This has been a Fox Footy production, part of the Fox Sports Network.